Good morning. Today is October 21st, 2017, and we are at the Community Media Center in Westminster, Maryland. And I am Elaine Stem, a 30-year combat veteran of the United States Marine Corps. And I have with me today Mr. John Benya, who is a Marine Corps veteran. And welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Now, you are a combat veteran who you were in Vietnam. Can you tell me a little bit about your life before you came in the Marine Corps, where you lived?
My family moved around a lot because my father ran movie theaters, and when he changed companies, he changed towns. The last town was Baltimore, so I was there for high school. After high school, I had enlisted in the Marines. As a matter of fact, several my classmates also did. From there, it just went on for another 4 years.
So you came in on a buddy system with some classmates?
No, we enlisted kind of different times. One of my best friends actually went to Parris Island during the summer, but I did a delayed to go in October, and that was so that I would have the summer free before I went in. It also, at the time, it was required that you had 6 years of military, 2 years inactive, so this went to part of my inactive time. So I was signed up, but I didn't go. And then in October, I went to Parris Island, got out at Christmas, and went to Camp Geiger afterwards. After Camp Geiger, got my assignment to Force Troops for engineers, and was supposed to go to diesel mechanic school, but it was overcrowded, so they sent us directly to our jobs at Engineer Battalion and worked on diesels.
Did you have a family member or siblings that were in the military that made you want to go in the military?
No, not really a sibling or anything. I had two uncles that had been in World War II, and they had been to Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and all those places, although they didn't really talk about it. One remained in the service for over 30 years. The other one had gotten out after World War II. My father was in World War II, but he joined the Navy, and he was a gunner on an aircraft called a PBY. He was a nose gunner. That took guts. They they flew escort for supply ships from Rio de Janeiro to Africa and back, and would drop torpedoes for submarines that suspected submarine areas, and to keep the waters clear. That was his job, and that's the closest I had for the military.
Well, it sounds like you were pretty much proud of your father, what he did, so it kind of, gave you that inkling to go into the military.
My father said one thing to me that always stuck with me was, this is a great country, you should always give back. And that's what I had planned to do.
I appreciate that, definitely. Is there any experience when you were going through your training of any of your instructors or anything that you can call to mind that you remember?
Do you mean from boot camp?
Yeah, from training. The training went through boot camp, after boot camp,
Boot camp was, itself was very rigorous. Didn't really care for it for about at least the first 4 weeks or so.
Nobody does.
After that, then it got interesting.
Right.
Then you really get into the obstacle course and the confidence course and the live fire and things. Then it becomes interesting. And the rifle range, which was really good because I knew how to shoot, but I really didn't know how to shoot well. Now I can shoot well. And target practice or target shooting is enjoyable to me.
And you enjoyed your military occupational specialty that you got in what was it, engineer?
It was as a diesel mechanic. 1341 was the MOS. I learned a lot because I really didn't know much about engines before I went in, but I knew quite a bit I knew almost everything about engines by the time I got out.
So shortly after your training, you were assigned to go to Vietnam? Or did you go somewhere else?
No, I did, I was at Camp Lejeune with Engineer Battalion. They had an outpost at Viegas Island, which I was sent to for about 6 months and back. Viegas Island at the time was 2/3 impact area. It was used for bombing runs and practice firing from planes and firing from ships. And we had to maintain roads and fuel dumps and ammo and stuff for them. That was during the summer for, as I said, for about 6 months. Then after Camp Lejeune, then I had gotten orders for Vietnam.
So what year were you in Vietnam?
I went in '66.
Well, that was a pretty serious time.
Yeah, but I missed the Tet Offensive, which I'm grateful for. But at the same time, you still get a little survivor's remorse. Why did you make it and nobody else did? I had gotten married just before I went over. That was a decision as to whether to get married before or after it was coming up, and then I got the orders. So I ended up getting married before, and actually my wife got pregnant and my daughter was born about 6 months after I was in Vietnam. And I didn't find out for 3 days, but the Red Cross got a hold of me finally. And trying to think what else I had.
What did you do there? You had an airfield that you were
I was,
talking about?
actually, we were not at the airfield. We were at Chu Lai, which was a peninsula. The peninsula raises to a hill near the ocean, or the South China Sea. They needed the hills because I was the radar company, and the radar is always on top of hills. And we ran generators for the radar and radios and whatever communication for pilots. Our company, which was Max 7, took care of in-country flights. The company next to us, which was a MAS 7, took care of airstrikes and things like that. So all of our radar was at the top of the hill. It looked like big bubbles, some of them, or they were traditional radar units that you see at the airport. The Viet Cong would some nights, usually about 3 in the morning, shoot mortars over us because across the road from us was a helipad, and they were trying to take out the helicopters. Also next to the helicopters was a medevac unit, and although they didn't care about that, they were trying to hit the helicopters, but they usually missed. Not very accurate when you use bamboo for mortars.
Did you see any casualties or anything that?
No, not really.
Okay, that's good.
There were a couple of guys that were mobile who would come from medevac, would come over to us, and we had a little club area where we could have a few drinks, and they would come up and talk to us or whatever. And some of their stories were pretty sad.
I'm sure. How about the officers and the enlisted that you worked around? Did you get close to any of them? Did you have some?
We were all, in our group in the generator section, we were all pretty tight. We were good friends, but unfortunately we didn't get to stay in touch afterwards because we all left country at different times. And back then there was hardly any communication. There was nothing. There was no internet. There was no Facebook. There was none of that sort of thing. So I've lost touch with all of them. And some of the guys I've tried to find at military.com, and for some reason they're not listed. And some of their names I've also forgotten, but those that I have, it's been hard trying to find them. So
Were you able to stay in touch with your family back home in some way?
Through letters, yes. And I don't believe there was any phone calls done. When I was in Viegas Island, we did phone calls through shortwave, and I think it was like once every week or two, you'd be on a list, and you would, it would be like it being in an airplane. You'd have to say over after you finished talking. So there was a shortwave communications at the top that the company actually was used to communicate with Washington and back. But on the off times, they would let us make phone calls.
Did you get food and supplies into your area pretty regularly?
Yes, because at the end of the peninsula was what they call a sand ramp, which is where the LSTs would unload supplies, whether it was trucks, tanks, or food. And our rations came in on pallets. Unfortunately, it was whatever came off was for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if you had a pallet of chicken, you had chicken for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for about a month, and then you would wait for the next ship to come in. But supplies came pretty steady, yes.
Did you have any entertainment there, like any Bob Hope shows or things like that?
No, we were waiting for Bob Hope. He was normally stopped at Chu Lai, and this was the one year he didn't stop, which was too bad because I had purchased a 8mm camera and film and everything, and
that didn't happen.
Didn't happen. But the USO would send a couple of small groups in for song and dance type of things. And the only other thing we had were 16mm films at night. They would run at the mess hall area. So usually old John Wayne movies.
When you finally got out of country, did you go to another duty station from there?
No, actually I was due to get out. So although the tour of duty was 13 months, I ended up spending closer to 12 because my date for getting out was at the end of October. So I went in October and came back in October.
What year was that?
That was 67.
67. Okay. And where did you go to when you got out of the service?
Well, I went back home to Baltimore and had my wife and my daughter, and I ended up running movie theaters like my dad did for a few years. And then I got into retail management, mostly because it paid better, and went on from there.
Did you take advantage of the GI Bill and go get your education or anything after that?
No, I really wasn't even that much aware of it at the time. And I had a wife and a child, and I had to have a job, and jobs weren't paying that well at that time. So getting time off to do something like that would have been difficult anyway. The only thing I finally did with it was I took a correspondence course in electronics, and actually eventually, much later down the road, I went back to college, and I got a couple AA degrees in electronics and computers. So.
Did you join any veterans organizations after you came back from the country?
No, I hadn't really thought about it, and I wasn't really approached. And there was, I think, a lot of animosity around at the time about Vietnam veterans, and I was trying not to bring attention to myself.
Unfortunately, that did happen.
Yes.
But there's more things out there now for Vietnam veterans than there were then, so you need to take advantage of that.
I'm starting to look around.
Good. Okay, so that's the career that you got into and up to this point?
Pretty much. I was in retail, and I went back to school and got degrees in electronics. But what I didn't know was that my credits wouldn't transfer because of course numbers. So I ended up not getting a 4-year degree. But I got 2 AAs.
Okay.
And I ended up going back into retail again. By this time, I had divorced my first wife, and this was with my second wife. She went back to school also, but she got a teaching degree. Mm-hmm. And so while she was teaching, I went back to work at retail, and we had 2 children in school. And I was closer to the children in school in case anything happened at school. And her teaching was several miles away in another county. So it was more convenient for me to stay closer to where my children were going to school. So So I kept an eye on them, took them to soccer games, things like that.
Oh, good. Do you feel like your military career, the time that you spent in the military, had an impact on your life later? You got something out of that?
Yes, I'd say it gave me more confidence and more world savvy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Would you do it again, go in the Marine Corps if you had to do it again?
Yes, I would. I definitely would.
And you would recommend it to any of the viewers here if they haven't been?
If they are up to it, yes. When I was a kid, I was a very skinny little kid, and I occasionally got bullied and that sort of thing. I didn't want that to happen again, and it's never happened since.
Right.
So I guess there's an aura, or an air about you that people treat you more as equals than before. And when I did come out of the boot camp, I did gain 20 pounds, which I pretty much kept on for the next 4, 5, 6 years. So that was pretty solid then.
So you learned from your life in the service?
Yes, I did.
Well, in closing, is there anything that you would like to tell any of the viewers that you would like to add that,
No, you just take life as it comes and you make the best of it, but that doesn't mean you can't make changes. And decisions you make will impact you later on. Hopefully they're good decisions.
Absolutely.
And military was right for me. I have 4 brothers. They are not in the military, and it's probably not right for them. So it depends on the person. But it made an impact on my life, yes.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming visiting with us today and talking to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.